Breath of the Wild, review embargo lifted this morning. It's a 10. It's getting dozens and dozens and dozens of perfect scores. This is great news.
Yeah.
IGN called it a masterclass in open world design and a watershed game that reinvents a 30-year-old franchise. Jose Otero actually reviewed Skyward Sword, not for IGN, but for 1UP. IGN gave Skyward Sword a 10 that was written by Rich George. Jose Otero actually gave it a B- for 1UP. They used a weird sort of school curriculum grading system there.
Well, to be fair, he used to be a school teacher, so that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. And I've been talking to Jose about why this game works, and I think what I really find fascinating about it is something that we're all going to look forward to here, is that we're all going to experience this game in very, very different ways. You can play things completely out of order. You can tackle scenarios differently. You can tackle sort of environmental puzzles and combat situations differently.
Yeah, no, that's really exciting. I love that. I love that it's encouraging that kind of playground thought process.
Yeah.
I was seeing bits and pieces of a GDC talk that was happening from Nintendo about how they designed it, and there's just stuff that they're like, we want to really make it so the players have to figure stuff out. They showed a thing where there's apparently a large rock at one part in the game, and you can push it entirely to a boss fight and then use it to fight the boss.
You can push it to the main boss of the game.
Oh, so you can fight the main boss with a rock.
Yeah, which
so that feels like
that
feels like a throwback to like using the butterfly net in Link to the Past. Like it's just to deflect the. And it's like you don't need a master sword, just use a net. Anyway, we're not the only ones who gave it a 10 out of 10. GameSpot also gave it a 10 out of 10, saying Breath of the Wild is a defining moment for the Legend of Zelda series and the most impressive game Nintendo has ever created.
Damn.
Okay. All right.
That says a lot when one of the most impressive video game developers of all time might have just made their best game. And this is coming off the tail end of a few years of us sort of being like, what's going on with Nintendo?
Right.
Like, let's be totally honest. We're big Nintendo fans here. I grew up with The Legend of Zelda. I grew up with Nintendo consoles. I've had a weird time tracking them the last few years. Now, the Wii U had a bunch of great games. 3DS had a bunch of great games. But one of the things you could always guarantee on year after year was that Nintendo was going to be one of the highest rated software developers of the year. If you look at stuff like Metacritic. The last few years, that hasn't been entirely true. I think they've been sort of hibernating, waiting for the Switch, putting their thoughts together. We didn't get a console Zelda on the Wii U. It's the first Nintendo console that didn't have a dedicated original Zelda game on it.
Which is nuts.
We got Wind Waker and Twilight Princess.
But back to Zelda. Game Informer said a profound new direction for one of gaming's best franchises and a new high point for open world interactive experiences. That's a huge thing right there. The fact that this is really, is this Nintendo's first like open world game really?
Well, the original
like
Legend of Zelda is one of their first open world games.
I mean, so they kind of invented it, but that was 30 years ago.
That's actually really good to hear because that actually sort of silences my biggest fear I had going into Breath of the Wild was, okay, so Nintendo's going to try to make an open world game.
Right.
But we have The Witcher, we have Far Cry, we have Horizon now. I mean, there are so many games that I'm like, GTA, like how do you compete with the juggernauts of open world games? And apparently, you do it in the way Nintendo does it.
Polygon said Breath of the Wild signals that Zelda has finally evolved and moved beyond the structure it's leaned on for so long. That is so huge because I feel like Nintendo, they're prone to doing incredibly weird, incoherent, like just where did that come from stuff? Like, I mean, like the Wii, for instance, or the DS. Like the idea of like these concepts that are just so like far out there. It's like you didn't have to go that far. You could have just done something safer.
Yeah, well, it's either that or they're completely iterative, right?
Like or like you get New Super Mario Brothers, and it's like it's Mario, but it's newish.
How many Zelda games now have been like, okay, the boy wakes up, he's got his fairy, he collects 3 of one thing, 7 of another thing, fights the main boss, and that's it.
Yeah.
The progression seems similar. Now we've seen hints of where Breath of the Wild is going. If you look at stuff like Link Between Worlds, right, which is pretty much free form, but even that was kind of like you'd get to a temple and there'd be a sign outside that said like, hammer, you need a hammer here.
Right.
It was pretty much, no pun intended, hammering you in the head with what you needed to do. So it feels like this is so much different and so much more free form. I'm really excited about that.
Then, of course, Time Magazine, my favorite gaming publication, said that an odyssey this beguiling and capacious happens to also be playable on planes, trains, and yes, the toilet is almost beside the point. Yeah.
I put this in here specifically because Time Magazine is a very sort of respected and heralded publication for decades and decades now. And
you can just say that it's a magazine for grown-ups.
And they got to say toilet in their review.
I think they're allowed to say toilet. It's a word.
I just like that they're being like,
that's pretty good.
It's cool and you can poop at the same time.
Yeah.
Time Magazine.
That's that's pretty funny.
Donald Trump, Man of the Year.
All right. As someone who loves open world games, this is one of the best out there. As someone who enjoys the Zelda series, I honestly think I can say the same thing. That's from US Gamer.
I call them us gamers.
I was just
sometimes.
about to say the exact same
Jeremy
thing.
Parrish gets very mad at me because he's like, we're not a tabloid.
Yeah.
But I love that. I love that because I think it's basically showing that people can come into this brand new. People can be lifelong Zelda fans, and you'll find something great in it. And I think that's the greatest achievement in modern gaming, and something that most franchises strive for and ultimately fail at.
Yeah. Games Radar says it has taken 18 years, but Nintendo has done it again. This is the adventure game to beat.
So that is specifically capping off two very important moments, watershed moments in video game history, and that is Ocarina of Time and Breath of the Wild. And between that, we've gotten Majora's Mask, we've got Twilight Princess, Wind Waker, which is like one of the best games of all time, but they're all sort of like along the same lines. And we're always talking about getting that Mario 64 moment again, right? And I think we had it with PSVR for a little bit. VR in general is sort of like the first time we got to sort of experience something new. But it sounds like this is bringing us back to that first time in 1996 or 97 when we opened up those Ocarina of Time cartridges and started playing that game. And damn, I'm so excited for this.
Yeah, it's good. And then here we have some other scores.
Yeah, so this was actually in the comment section of, I'm sorry if I don't have the person to credit for this. This was in the comment section of the IGN official review for Breath of the Wild. Just 10s everywhere.
That's awesome. That's
Perfect
so
scores,
good. Yeah.
10s everywhere. I mean, there was a couple guys here and there that were like 97, but you know, they got their points.
Nobody here is like 5 out of 10.
Yeah. Hi,
Rent
there
Rento
I am.
pie.